My family has a small cabin in the Green Mountains near Stowe, Vermont. My grandfather bought the place decades ago because he and my grandmother were obsessed with snowboarding. Since then, it stayed in the family, so it is already getting close to 50 years old. It shows its age in every way you could imagine. My dad, who is an engineer and can fix almost anything, spent half of his adult life patching the roof, the pipes, the porch steps. The place is still ours, but it is falling apart at this point. He talks about tearing it down and building from scratch, but that decision is his, not mine. This happened about 12 years ago. I was 9 years old. My older sister, Hannah, was 12. We were at the cabin during a blizzard, the kind that buries the car door, and, of course, my sister and I could not stay indoors. The best part of going there when we were little was the massive amount of space. Our property opens into a large clearing, surrounded by woods in every direction, and a narrow, dead-end road goes down the slope to other properties almost as large as ours. It was basically made for hide-and-seek, snowball fights, that kind of thing. So, Hannah and I bundled up, snow pants, 2 pairs of gloves, all that production my mom insisted on, and we went out to play our version of Capture the Flag, which we basically invented. The snow was already past the knee and kept falling sideways in thick, heavy layers, making it hard to see more than about 9 meters in any direction. The rules were simple. Each one chose a spot to build a fort, but we had to tell each other where it was. Then we made a giant snowball. We called it the Crown, and the goal was to invade the other's fort, steal their crown, and bring it back to your own base without getting caught. Hannah decided to build her fort on the property next to ours, a long lot that belonged to a family who almost never used the place. Out of 10 times we went to the cabin, maybe there was a car in their driveway once, so we treated their lot as our private playground. We piled up small walls of snow to simulate a fort, and hid the crown behind them, already half buried before we even finished compacting it to get to each other's base. We could cut straight through the woods, or take the longer way by the road, which at that point was already starting to accumulate snow in some spots. The plan was that, as soon as Hannah disappeared down the road, I would wait for her whistle to know that the game had officially started. I waited for a while, more than 5 minutes, for sure. She already had plenty of time to build the fort. All that was missing was to blow the whistle. When it got close to the 10-minute mark, I concluded that I probably just could not hear it from there, so I started planning. Woods or road? I chose the road, because crossing the woods alone during a blizzard, at 9 years old, is a genuinely terrifying idea. I walked with difficulty through the snow that had not been cleared, flakes hitting the side of my face, although, with all the layers of clothing my mom forced me to wear, I was not feeling cold at all. As I approached the neighbor's property, I looked through the trees and did not see Hannah anywhere. With everything dry and leafless because of winter, it was possible to see very far into the woods. I cut a path through the trees to their lot to get a better look, but Hannah was nowhere to be found. I found her fort, looked around, and when I was sure she was not in sight, I went there to grab the crown. Before I could touch it, I heard a woman's voice shout, "Excuse me, are you looking for your sister?" I turned toward the sound, the snow stinging my eyes. An older woman was standing at the front door of the neighbor's house. The porch light behind her formed a halo in the falling snow. I shouted back that we were just playing a game. She said, "Your sister is inside here." I was completely confused. I started walking toward the front steps, crossing mounds of snow accumulated against the porch, and as I got closer, her face became clearer through the snow to my 9-year-old eyes. She looked much older than she probably actually was. As I approached the house, I noticed someone in one of the upstairs windows, watching me through the glass, with snow accumulating on the sill below them. For a second, I even thought it was Hannah. Whoever was there had half of their face covered, probably by a black beanie, and the rest hidden below the window frame. I also noticed a second trail of footprints, leading to the front door, already half covered by the fresh snow. They had to be Hannah's. The woman gave me a strange, wide smile. My heart started racing. For no reason I could explain, she motioned for me to come in, to get out of the cold and the snow. I froze in place. Snowflakes stuck to my eyelashes, and I screamed, "Hannah!" No answer. The woman's smile disappeared instantly. It was clear she did not expect that. I also noticed that the second trail of footprints had turned around, cutting new tracks in the snow. If those footprints were Hannah's, she had turned and gone back toward the woods. Then, I heard heavy footsteps inside the house, like someone upstairs starting to come down the stairs. I ran away, snow flying around my boots with every step. The woman shouted something, to me or to someone else. I could not tell. That got lost in the wind. I looked back once, through the curtain of snow, and whoever was at that upstairs window was no longer there. I ran off the property and went back to the road, repeating my own footprints from minutes before, which were already starting to disappear under the fresh snow. That was when I started to hear the tolling of the dinner bell that my dad kept hanging on the porch, the one he rang to call us for dinner, coming from the top of the slope, through the snow. When I reached our driveway, snow covering my entire coat, my dad and Hannah were already there. They had gone out to look for me. Before I could start explaining what had just happened, Hannah was already telling me that the people in the neighbor's house had also told her to come in. I said the exact same thing had happened to me. My dad grabbed his rifle and went over there, stepping into the storm, while the rest of us waited inside the house with my mom, watching the snow pile up against the windows. He came back much later, snow stuck to the ridges of his boots, and said the front door was locked, and nobody answered. We went to another neighbor's house after that. People who actually knew the family that owned the lot, and they called the owners directly. This is the part that still gives me chills. Every time my dad mentions it, the owners had not been there. During that entire weekend, nobody was supposed to be in that house. The police were called, and Hannah and I had to describe the woman to an officer on the scene. After that, we were not informed of anything else. According to my dad, the back door had been left unlocked. The house was searched, and nothing was found. Because of that, my parents started taking all valuables home whenever we left the cabin, afraid of a break-in while we were away. After that day, we never played on that property again. Just the creepiness factor of that memory was enough to keep us away from there. I am just glad that neither of us actually walked through that door. Every winter, Jake, Connor, and I do the exact same thing. We drive to a frozen lake a few towns over. There is no grand reason for it. We go simply because we like it. There is something about that silence. The ice stretching out in every direction, the air completely still. If you've ever stood alone in the snow with absolutely no sound around you, you understand. It feels like the entire world pressed pause just for you. The photos look incredible too. That helps. This happened last winter. Pause, I'm writing this in March. Pause, so it has been about 4 months. Nobody fell through the ice. That is not what this story is about. That night, it was snowing heavily. That was what made us decide to go. It had been below zero for weeks, so the lake was bound to be completely solid. I've always preferred winter. Jake and Connor do too. There is something about the snow that I would not trade for anything. First, because it is beautiful, but what I love most is what it does to the darkness. Even after the sun disappears, the world does not go pitch black. The snow reflects whatever light exists and creates this strange atmosphere. Neither day nor night. That night, there was a nearly full moon. Everything was very bright, very quiet. The kind of night that feels unreal. Connor drove. He had a pickup truck that handled well in the snow. The lake is surrounded by trees, and you cannot drive right up to the edge. We parked in a nearby lot and headed out on foot. We got out of the car and the cold hit us hard. Jake and Connor lit cigarettes. We started walking. It must have been past midnight. There was nobody else out there. No animals, no people, no movement besides the three of us and the falling snow. We reached the lake, frozen as expected. Connor picked up a rock and threw it onto the ice to test it. It did not crack. It just slid and stopped. We moved forward about 30 meters out. Nothing reckless, but far enough to feel like we were in the middle of it all. We were laughing at some stupid joke when everything stopped. On the other side of the lake, near the trees, there was a figure. Large, dark, moving slowly toward the ice. Our conversation died instantly. Jake whispered, "Is that a bear?" barely moving his lips. I did not answer. I just stood there. My heart was already racing, but something was wrong. The way the thing moved was not animalistic. It was too upright, too human, and there was something being dragged behind it. Then the figure straightened up completely. It was no bear. It was a person in a bear costume. Connor muttered, "What the hell?" And I thought exactly the same thing. I know that writing this down might not sound that scary, but if you had been there, in that silence, in the dead of night, you would have frozen too. I tried to speak and nothing came out. The figure kept walking across the ice, dragging something attached to a rope. The snow blurred the details, but as it came closer, it became clearer. It was a dark bag, small like a trash bag, but much smaller. We stood there, frozen. My mind was screaming at some point to run, but my body would not obey. Jake and Connor were not moving either. None of us could turn our backs. I needed to understand what was happening. Then the person unzipped and stepped out of the costume. He was not big. There was nothing physically intimidating about him, but there was something deeply disturbing that I could not put into words. He knelt down, picked up what looked like a rock, and started hammering the ice. Hard, repeatedly, without stopping. I swear I felt the vibration through my feet, even from that distance. He was trying to break the ice to discard the bag. Jake touched my shoulder. When I looked, he and Connor were already backing away toward the shore. I followed without saying a word. We tried to move quickly and quietly at the same time. Every single step in the snow sounded deafening in that silence. Then came the voice behind us. "Hey." I did not look back, I just ran. The cold cut through my lungs. In less than a minute, I was completely out of breath. I do not know if he chased us. I did not want to know. We reached the shore, panting. We got back to the car in total silence. Connor drove away immediately. On the way back, we kept trying to make sense of it. Connor said it was just someone dumping illegal trash. I said nobody does that in a bear costume in the middle of a winter night. Jake said it was a body being disposed of. I said the bag was too small for that. We got nowhere. We still haven't. The reason I'm thinking about this now is that my mom was watching TV last week and an old missing child report came on from our region. The timeline of the disappearance matched that exact night. It could be a coincidence. It probably is. But I cannot stop thinking about it. Growing up, I was always surrounded by snow. My father worked for years as a mountain patroller at ski resorts in Colorado, and my mother was an instructor. Because of that, my sister and I learned to ski practically before we learned to ride a bike. This story happened when I was 24 years old, during the last winter before I started my first full-time job. Me and 3 friends, Cole, Mason, and Derek, we all decided to take advantage of a long weekend at a massive ski resort in northern New Hampshire. I do not remember exactly which mountain it was. It has been a few years since then. What I do remember is that it was gigantic, with several peaks connected by chairlifts, and dozens of trails scattered across kilometers of snow-covered forest. We spent 2 full days skiing. On the second day, we already knew the best runs and we were looking for something more exciting. There was a little over 1 hour left before the chairlifts closed for the day when everything started. We were resting near a high area of the mountain when 2 girls appeared. One of them was a redhead and the other had dark, almost black hair. The two of them caught our attention immediately, not just because of their looks, but because of the confidence with which they approached four strangers. They introduced themselves as Brooke and Savannah. The conversation started naturally. They said they were bored because the resort was full of families and older tourists. They mentioned that they had finally found someone their own age. It seemed innocent, maybe even lucky. Savannah noticed that we were sharing some mini bottles of cinnamon whiskey and started joking, saying that it was a drink for beginners. Then she pulled a small metal flask from her jacket pocket. No label, no brand. She said that it was real alcohol. Cole and Derek accepted immediately. Mason did too. I took only a short sip. Something was bothering me. I could not explain it. Maybe it was the fact that those two women had appeared out of nowhere. Maybe it was because neither of them seemed truly interested in skiing. Or maybe because during the entire conversation, I did not see them drink even once. Still, I kept following the group. Shortly after, Brooke asked if we had ever been down a trail called Widow's Pass. None of us knew it. She explained that it was a little known path through the forest and that almost nobody used it because it was hidden from the tourist maps. That immediately sparked our interest. We liked precisely the less crowded trails, so we agreed to go. They started leading us to an isolated region of the mountain. After a few minutes, they asked us to take off our skis because it would be necessary to walk up a short incline. I found it strange. In years of skiing, I had never needed to climb a slope on foot to reach an official slope. Mason mentioned the same thing to me in a low voice, but the other two were already distracted talking to the girls. We continued. The forest became increasingly silent. There was no one around, no recent tracks in the snow, no sound of chairlifts, nothing. When we finally reached a flatter area, Brooke insisted that we finish the drink. Cole and Derek took large gulps. Mason refused. For a split second, I saw something change in her expression. It was fast, but it looked like anger. Soon after, the smile returned, as if nothing had happened. When the flask reached me, I only touched it to my lips without drinking. My instinct was screaming. I looked at my watch. There were less than 40 minutes left before the resort closed. I suggested that we go back. The two of them insisted that the trail would lead us directly to the base of the mountain. Then they slid down the slope and challenged us to follow them. Cole and Derek went after them immediately. We had no choice. We followed too. The descent was difficult but short. When we reached the bottom, I felt a huge relief, until I realized that something was wrong. There were no chairlifts, there were no signs, there were no tracks, just forest on all sides. I asked where we were. They told us to relax, that the exit was right there. It was at that exact moment that I heard a sound behind me, a dull thud. I turned around. Cole was lying in the snow, unconscious. I thought he had tripped. Then Derek fell too, like a puppet whose strings had been cut. My heart raced. I ran to them. They were breathing, but completely blacked out. Mason stepped toward the girls, demanding explanation. They pretended to be surprised. They took a step back. They said they did not know what was happening. Then Mason also collapsed. I was left alone. My head started to spin, my vision became blurry. My legs felt like concrete. I knew exactly what was happening. I just could not believe it. The two of them just watched me, waiting, as if they were waiting for my turn. I sat in the snow because I could no longer stand. I asked repeatedly what they had put in that drink. No answer. Minutes later, I heard one of them say, "He did not drink enough." The other replied with a curse word. She sounded annoyed. Then they said they needed to go. No rush, no fear, as if this had already happened before. They grabbed Cole and Derek's expensive skis and disappeared among the trees. Little by little, I began to regain control of my body. I decided to follow them. The footprints were easy to find. The snow was untouched. I walked for several minutes until the forest opened up. That was when I saw a road and a white van parked. My blood ran cold. The side door of the van opened. 4 men stepped out, all of them big, all of them watching. The girls walked up to them. One of the men pointed directly at me. With that instant, I understood that the skis were probably never the main objective. I did not wait to find out what was. I turned around and ran. Or at least I tried to run. I went back following my own footprints. When I found my friends, they were still unconscious. I managed to wake Mason first. I told him everything. We waited for more than 1 hour until the other two regained consciousness. None of them remembered anything after that last drink. Finding the parking lot was a nightmare. Explaining the situation to the mountain management was another. The police opened an investigation. There were searches, interviews, reports, but nobody ever identified those people. Years have passed. We still do not know who they were, nor what they put in that flask, nor what would have happened if I had drunk the same as my friends. Maybe it was just an extremely elaborate robbery scheme. Maybe not. What scares me the most is thinking about the van, about those men waiting, and about the fact that they seemed prepared for something much bigger than simply stealing a few skis.